The morning mist hung heavy over the Montana foothills, casting a dreamlike haze across the winding dirt road where Elena Reyes limped alongside her ancient station wagon. Steam billowed from the hood of the broken-down vehicle, joining the fog that clung to the valley. Inside the car, her 4-year-old twins slept against each other, exhausted from crying, while a speckled hen clucked softly from a woven basket on the passenger seat. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 300 miles, Elena whispered, her voice cracking as she wiped sweat from her brow. We made it 300 miles only to break down in the middle of nowhere. She glanced at her swollen ankle, the result of twisting it when she'd stepped into a pothole while checking the engine. The pain shot up her leg with each step, but she kept moving. She had to find help. For the twins. For herself. For whatever remained of the life she was desperately trying to rebuild. Elena had left everything behind. The apartment they could no longer afford after her husband abandoned them, the waitressing job that barely covered daycare, and the sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful glances from neighbors who watched her struggle daily. All she had left were her children, her grandmother's chicken that she couldn't bear to leave behind, and an address scribbled on a faded newspaper clipping about a ranch that needed help. The sun was climbing higher now, burning away the morning mist and revealing the vastness of the Montana landscape. Fields of wild grass stretched toward distant mountains, beautiful and intimidating in their emptiness. Elena had never felt so small, so utterly alone. 2 more miles to Whispering Pines Ranch, she murmured, checking the wrinkled map on her phone's last bit of battery. Just 2 more miles. She limped back to the car and gently woke the twins. Maya, Lucas, she whispered, we need to walk a little, okay? Mama's going to carry you both as far as I can. Their sleepy eyes blinked up at her, trusting despite the uncertainty that had become their life. Lucas reached for his worn stuffed wolf, and Maya clutched her favorite blanket. Elena gathered the chicken's basket in one arm and helped the children out with the other. What about Freckles? Maya asked, pointing to the speckled hen. She's coming too, sweetheart. We stick together, remember? Elena managed to smile despite the throbbing in her ankle. Our little family always sticks together. With the chicken basket looped over one arm and a small backpack of essentials on her back, Elena hoisted Lucas onto her hip. Maya, always the independent one, insisted on walking beside her, tiny hand clutched in her mother's. They began their journey down the dusty road, each step sending spikes of pain through Elena's ankle. After half a mile, sweat drenched her shirt, and the weight of Lucas made her arms tremble. The boy had fallen asleep again, his head heavy against her shoulder. Maya was slowing too, her initial determination fading with each step under the strengthening sun. Let's rest a minute, Elena said, carefully lowering Lucas to the grassy roadside. She set down the chicken basket, Freckles clucking indignantly at the disturbance. Elena collapsed beside her children, massaging her ankle. The swelling had worsened, the skin now an angry purple beneath her sock. Mama, I'm thirsty, Maya whispered, her lips chapped from the dry air. Elena reached for their water bottle, their last, and let each child take a small sip before taking one herself. She had to make it last, had to make everything last. The few dollars in her pocket, the half-empty box of crackers, the determination that was beginning to waver like heat on the horizon. That's when she heard it. The distant rumble of an engine. Heart hammering, Elena struggled to her feet, ignoring the white-hot pain that shot up her leg. A vehicle was approaching from the direction they were heading. Stand back, children, she said, moving them to the roadside. A dust cloud appeared first. Then the outline of a weathered blue truck emerged. Elena raised her arm, waving desperately. The truck slowed, then pulled alongside them. A man leaned out the driver's window, pushing back a worn leather hat to reveal a sun-weathered face and questioning gray eyes. You folks all right? He asked, his voice deep and graveled with concern. Elena swallowed her pride. Our car broke down about a mile back. We're trying to reach Whispering Pines Ranch. I heard they might have work. The man's eyebrows rose slightly as he took in the scene. a limping woman, two small children, and a chicken peering curiously from a basket. His gaze lingered on Elena's obviously injured ankle. "That's my place," he said finally. "Whispering Pines. I'm Caleb Donovan." Relief washed over Elena like a physical force. "I'm Elena Reyes. These are my twins, Maya and Lucas." She hesitated. "And that's Freckles." The ghost of a smile crossed Caleb's features. "Don't see many traveling chickens in these parts." "She was my grandmother's," Elena explained, feeling suddenly foolish. "I couldn't leave her behind." Caleb studied them for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped out of the truck, revealing his tall frame clad in worn jeans and a faded work shirt. "Let's get you all in the truck. You can't walk on that ankle." With gentle efficiency, he helped Maya into the back seat, then took Lucas from Elena's arms. The boy stirred, but didn't wake as Caleb secured him beside his sister. Finally, he turned to Elena. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her injured leg. "Confused?" Elena nodded. Caleb knelt and carefully examined her ankle, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. "Definitely sprained, maybe worse. You shouldn't be putting any weight on this." Before she could protest, he stood and lifted her as easily as he had lifted Lucas, carrying her to the passenger side of the truck. Elena clutched the chicken basket to her chest, too shocked to speak. Once she was settled, Caleb retrieved their small backpack from the roadside. "What about our car?" Elena asked as he climbed behind the wheel. "All our things." "We'll send someone for your belongings," he assured her. "Right now, you need ice on that ankle, and these little ones need water and food." As the truck pulled away, Elena stole a glance at the rancher's profile. His features were hard, shaped by sun and wind and what appeared to be years of solitude. Yet there was something in the way he had handled her children, a natural gentleness that seemed at odds with his rough exterior. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't come along." Caleb kept his eyes on the road. "What brings you to Whispering Pines, Mrs. Reyes?" "Ms." she corrected automatically. "I saw an ad in a newspaper. Ranch hand needed, family housing available. We needed a fresh start." He nodded, but said nothing more as they crested a hill, revealing a sweeping vista of green pastures dotted with grazing cattle. A cluster of buildings nestled against the backdrop of pine-covered mountains. A large timber house, several barns, and what appeared to be smaller cabins scattered near a creek. "It's beautiful," Elena breathed, the landscape so different from the crowded city streets they'd left behind. "It's hard work," Caleb replied, but there was unmistakable pride in his voice. "Ranch has been in my family for 3 generations." As they approached, Elena noticed activity around the barns, workers moving with purpose, horses and paddocks, the organized chaos of a working ranch. Anxiety knotted in her stomach. What had she been thinking? She knew nothing about ranch work. How could she possibly convince this man to hire her? Caleb pulled up to the main house and cut the engine. "Let's get you inside and take care of that ankle first. Then we can talk." The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly warm and welcoming. Polished wood floors, comfortable furniture, walls adorned with landscape paintings and family photographs. Caleb led them to a spacious kitchen where an older woman with silver-streaked hair was kneading dough at a large table. "Margaret," Caleb called. "We have guests." The woman turned, flour dusting her hands and apron. Her eyes widened at the sight of Elena limping in with 2 shy children and a chicken basket. "This is Elena Reyes and her twins," Caleb explained. "Their car broke down on County Line Road. Ms. Reyes has injured her ankle." Margaret wiped her hands and approached with a warm smile. "Well, you poor dears, let's get you settled." She pulled out a chair for Elena. "Caleb, fetch the first aid kit and some ice." While Caleb disappeared down a hallway, Margaret turned her attention to the twins. "And who might you two be?" I'm Maya, the girl said, stepping forward with unexpected boldness. That's Lucas. He doesn't talk much to strangers. And that's Freckles, she added, pointing to the basket where the chicken had settled down, seemingly content with her new surroundings. Margaret's eyes twinkled. Well, I think Freckles might like to meet our chickens later. Are you hungry? I just took some cookies from the oven. The mention of food made both children perk up immediately. Elena felt a pang of shame. When had they last had a proper meal? The gas station sandwiches yesterday evening seemed a lifetime ago. Caleb returned with a first aid kit and an ice pack. He knelt before Elena and carefully removed her shoe. The ankle was now visibly swollen, mottled with deepening bruises. This needs more than just ice, he said, his brow furrowed. Margaret, call Dr. Haze. Ask if she can stop by on her way back from the Henderson place. I can't afford a doctor, Elena protested quietly. Caleb met her gaze. Dr. Haze is a friend. Let's just get you taken care of, all right? There was something in his steady gray eyes that quieted Elena's objections. He wrapped her ankle expertly, then elevated it on another chair before placing the ice pack over the bandage. Margaret had set milk and cookies before the twins, who were eating with the focused intensity of truly hungry children. Elena watched them, fighting back tears of relief, exhaustion, and lingering fear. What would happen when they finished this unexpected kindness? Where would they go if there was no job here? As if reading her thoughts, Caleb pulled up a chair across from her. Now, about why you're here. You mentioned the ad for a ranch hand? Elena nodded, suddenly acutely aware of her circumstances. Injured, desperate, with 2 young children and a chicken. Hardly the ideal candidate for physical labor on a working ranch. I know what you're thinking, she said, straightening her shoulders. But I'm stronger than I look. I'm a hard worker, quick learner. The twins are well behaved, and Have you ever worked on a ranch before? Caleb interrupted gently. Elena deflated slightly. No, but I've done all kinds of work. Waitressing, office cleaning, retail, childcare. I can cook, sew, handle basic repairs. I'm not afraid of long hours or getting my hands dirty. Caleb studied her for a long moment. What were you running from? The direct question caught her off guard. I'm not running from anything. I'm running towards something. A better life for my children. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Fair enough. He glanced at the twins, who were now helping Margaret roll out dough, their small hands covered in flour. The position I advertised was for stable work, feeding livestock, mending fences. Not exactly suitable for someone with your current limitations. Elena's heart sank. She had known it was a long shot, but hearing the rejection still stung sharply. However, Caleb continued, Margaret has been asking for help with the house and the garden for months now. The place is too much for her alone, especially during calving season when everyone's busy with the herd. Hope flickered in Elena's chest. I could do that. I'm good with houses, with gardens. The pay isn't much, he warned. And the housing is basic. A 2-bedroom cabin by the creek. It needs some fixing up. Does it have a roof? Running water? Elena asked. Caleb nodded. Then it's better than where we were headed, she said simply. Something shifted in Caleb's expression, a softening around his eyes. There's one more thing you should know. This isn't just a job offer. Whoever takes this position, they become part of Whispering Pines, part of our small community. We look out for each other here. Elena glanced at her children, now laughing as Margaret showed them how to shape the dough into what appeared to be animal figures. Lucas, usually so withdrawn, was actually smiling, something she hadn't seen in months. We've been on our own a long time, Mr. Donovan, she said quietly. We've had to be. Caleb, he corrected, and maybe you don't have to be anymore. Before Elena could respond, the kitchen door swung open and a woman entered carrying a medical bag. She was tall, with copper-colored hair pulled back in a practical braid, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt rather than a doctor's coat. "Got here as quick as I could," she announced, then paused, taking in the scene before her. Her eyes landed on Elena. "You must be the patient. I'm Kate Haze, the local vet. And sometimes people doctor when Doc Miller's busy." "Vet?" Elena repeated, confusion evident in her voice. Kate grinned. 8 years of medical training is 8 years of medical training. I stitch up these cowboys more often than my four-legged patients. Now, let's have a look at that ankle." As Kate examined her injury with professional efficiency, Elena found herself watching Caleb, who had moved to help the twins with their dough creations. His large hands were gentle as he guided Lucas's smaller ones, showing him how to shape what appeared to be a horse. The boy was looking up at the rancher with something akin to wonder. "Good news," Kate announced, reclaiming Elena's attention. "It's a bad sprain, but nothing's broken. You'll need to stay off it for at least a week, then limited weight-bearing for another 2 weeks after that." "A week?" Elena's voice rose in dismay. "But the job—" "Will still be here," Caleb interrupted, looking up from the children. "Cabin's not going anywhere either." Kate began wrapping Elena's ankle with a supportive bandage. "You'll need crutches. I have a pair in my truck you can borrow." "I can't possibly accept all this help," Elena protested, overwhelmed by the kindness of these strangers. Margaret returned from the pantry with a basket of vegetables. "Of course you can, dear. That's how things work around here." She turned to Caleb. "I've made up the guest room for them. The cabin won't be ready until we've aired it out and checked for repairs anyway." Elena looked from Margaret to Kate to Caleb, searching for any sign of reluctance or obligation in their offers of help. Instead, she found only genuine warmth and a matter-of-factness that suggested this was simply how they treated people in need. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "We won't be a burden. As soon as my ankle heals." "You'll have plenty of time to prove yourself," Caleb assured her. "For now, just rest and get better." He glanced at the twins, now proudly displaying their dough creations. "And maybe help these two settle in." A tentative hope blossomed in Elena's chest, foreign and fragile after so many months of despair. She watched as Lucas shyly offered his dough horse to Caleb, who accepted it with exaggerated admiration. The boy beamed, a sight so precious that Elena had to blink back tears. Later, as afternoon faded into evening, Elena found herself on the wide porch of the main house, her injured leg propped on a footstool, watching as Caleb showed the twins the ranch dogs, 3 border collies who seemed delighted by the attention. Freckles had been temporarily housed in a spacious pen with the ranch chickens, where she appeared to be holding court, her speckled feathers distinctive among the uniform brown of the others. Kate Haze settled into the rocking chair beside Elena, handing her a cup of steaming tea. "Those are some resilient kids you've got there," Elena smiled, watching Maya attempting to give commands to the youngest collie. "They've had to be." "And their father?" Kate asked carefully. "Gone," Elena replied, her voice flat. "Decided family life wasn't for him. Left us with debt and not much else." Kate nodded, asking no further questions. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the children play in the golden evening light. "Caleb's a good man," Kate said finally. "Best I've ever known, actually. Lost his wife about 5 years ago. Cancer hit him hard." Elena glanced at the rancher, noticing for the first time the shadow of grief that seemed to hang about him, visible now in the set of his shoulders, as he patiently showed Lucas how to pet the oldest dog. "The ranch nearly went under after Emily died," Kate continued. "He couldn't seem to care about anything. Then last year something changed. He started rebuilding, hiring new hands, making improvements. This is the first time he's offered the cabin to a family, though." "Why tell me this?" Elena asked. Kate smiled. "Just so you know where you've landed. Whispering Pines isn't just a ranch. For many of us, it's been salvation." As if sensing they were talking about him, Caleb looked up, catching Elena's gaze. Something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, of shared struggles and the strength it takes to keep moving forward. That night, tucked into a comfortable guest room with the twins sleeping soundly in a trundle bed beside her, Elena stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the day's extraordinary turn of events. Yesterday they had been on the edge of homelessness, her last few dollars spent on gas to reach a desperate chance at employment. Today they were safe, fed, and surrounded by unexpected kindness. It seemed too good to be true. Experience had taught Elena that good fortune often came with hidden costs. Yet something about Caleb Donovan's straightforward manner, about the genuine warmth of Margaret and Kate, made her want to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, they had finally found a place where they could heal. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, pattering against the window. Elena closed her eyes, allowing herself, for the first time in months, to hope for a future brighter than their past. The next morning, Elena woke to the unfamiliar sounds of a working ranch. Distant lowing of cattle, the neighing of horses, the mechanical rumble of tractors. Sunlight streamed through curtains she hadn't drawn, illuminating a room that felt impossibly peaceful compared to the noisy apartments and cheap motels that had been their recent accommodations. The twins were already awake, whispering to each other as they often did, creating their own private world. Elena watched them for a moment, her heart full. They deserved so much more than what life had given them so far. "Good morning, my loves," she said softly. They turned to her with matching smiles, their dark curls tousled from sleep. "Mama, the nice man said we can see baby cows today," Lucas exclaimed, his usual shyness forgotten in excitement. "And horses," Maya added. "Real ones, not just pictures." Elena struggled to sit up, wincing as her movement jostled her injured ankle. The pain was a sharp reminder of their precarious situation. Kindness or not, she needed to prove her worth to Caleb Donovan, needed to secure their place here before her welcome wore thin. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Margaret entered carrying a tray laden with breakfast and a pair of crutches. "Thought you might be hungry," she said cheerfully, setting the tray on the bedside table. "And Dr. Haze dropped these off for you this morning." "Thank you," Elena said, eyeing the crutches with determination. "I should get up, start learning my duties." "Your only duty today is to rest that ankle," Margaret interrupted firmly. "Doctor's orders. Besides, Caleb promised the little ones a tour of the ranch. Thought you might like to join them once you've eaten." The twins bounced with excitement, their energy palpable. Elena couldn't remember the last time she'd seen them so animated, so carefree. For their sake, she nodded agreement. Using the crutches proved challenging, but Elena was nothing, if not stubborn. By mid-morning, she had managed to make her way to the front porch, where Caleb waited with a modified golf cart. "Thought this might be easier than hobbling around on those," he said, nodding to her crutches. The twins were already settled in the back seat, barely containing their excitement. Caleb helped Elena into the passenger seat with the same gentle efficiency he'd shown the day before, his hands strong and sure as they supported her weight. "Thank you," she said, suddenly aware of how close he was, of the clean scent of soap and pine that seemed to cling to him. He stepped back, something unreadable flickering in his gray eyes. "Ready for the grand tour?" The next 2 hours were a revelation. Caleb drove them slowly around the vast property, explaining the operations of the ranch with quiet pride. The twins peppered him with questions that he answered with surprising patience, never talking down to them despite their young age. Elena watched him as they visited the calving barn, where 2 newborn calves wobbled on spindly legs beside their mothers. His face softened when he spoke of the animals, and he treated his ranch hands with a respect that was clearly mutual. "This is where you'd be working," he said as they approached a large vegetable garden beside a smaller barn. "Margaret oversees the garden. We grow most of our own produce. The chicken coop is there, and beyond it is the orchard. The ranch is as self-sufficient as we can make it." "It's amazing," Elena said honestly. "You've built something special here." A shadow crossed his face. "My grandfather built it. My father expanded it. I'm just trying not to lose it." There was a story there, Elena sensed, but before she could inquire further, Lucas called out in excitement as he spotted Freckles in the chicken yard. The speckled hen was pecking contentedly alongside the ranch chickens, apparently having established herself without issue. "Looks like at least one of you is settling in," Caleb observed with a small smile. They continued to the creek, where a small cluster of cabins stood in various states of repair. Caleb stopped the cart in front of one painted a faded blue, with a small porch and flower boxes currently empty beneath the windows. "This would be yours," he said, "if you decide to stay." Elena took in the cabin, modest but solid, with a view of both the creek and the distant mountains. A massive pine tree provided shade for half the structure, and a stone path led to a small backyard area. "Can we look inside?" she asked. Caleb helped her from the cart, supporting her weight as she maneuvered up the 3 steps to the porch. The twins raced ahead, eager to explore. Inside, the cabin was clean but bare, a small living area with a stone fireplace, a basic kitchen, and 2 bedrooms visible through doorways. The furniture was minimal but sturdy. A couch, a kitchen table with chairs, empty bookshelves built into the walls. "It needs work," Caleb admitted. "Paint, some repairs to the bathroom. The roof is sound, though, and the heating works for winter." Elena could already envision it. Curtains at the windows, the twins' drawings on the refrigerator, maybe wildflowers in those empty flower boxes. A home, something they hadn't had in too long. "It's perfect," she said softly. Caleb looked surprised, then pleased. "There's one more place I'd like to show you before lunch." Back in the cart, they followed a winding path uphill, eventually cresting a ridge that overlooked the entire ranch. Caleb cut the engine, and for a moment, they all sat in silence, taking in the breathtaking view. "My grandfather used to bring me here," Caleb said finally. "Called it Thinking Ridge. Said you could see everything that mattered from this spot." Elena understood why. From this vantage point, Whispering Pines wasn't just beautiful. It was a complete world unto itself. The main house and barns, the sprawling pastures with their grazing cattle, the silver ribbon of creek winding through groves of aspen and pine, the distant mountains standing sentinel over it all. "When Emily got sick," Caleb continued, his voice low enough that the twins, distracted by a butterfly, couldn't hear, "I came up here a lot, trying to make sense of it all. After she died, I stopped coming. Couldn't bear to see what I was letting slip away." Elena turned to him, surprised by the personal disclosure. "What changed?" He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. "Time, I guess, and perspective. One day I realized that letting this place go would mean losing the last thing that still connected me to her, to my family's legacy." "So you rebuilt," Elena said softly. Caleb nodded. "Started hiring again, fixed what had fallen into disrepair, started living instead of just existing." He glanced at her. "What about you? What made you pack up everything and drive 300 miles on a slim chance?" Elena watched her children, who were now sitting in the grass, pointing out shapes in the clouds above. "They did," she said simply. "After their father left, I tried everything to keep us afloat in the city. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. But daycare costs more than I could make, and we kept falling behind. The eviction notice was the final straw. I saw your ad in a newspaper someone had left at the diner where I worked. It seemed like a sign. A sign that led you to break down on a deserted road with a sprained ankle," Caleb observed, a hint of humor in his voice. Elena surprised herself by laughing. "When you put it that way, not the most encouraging sign." She turned serious again. "But it led us here. To people who helped strangers without question. That has to mean something." Something shifted in Caleb's expression, a softening that transformed his weathered features. "Maybe it does." That evening, after a day that had exhausted her both physically and emotionally, Elena sat on the porch of the main house, watching as Caleb taught the twins how to feed carrots to one of the gentler horses. Lucas, usually so timid, was laughing as the horse's velvety muzzle tickled his palm. Maya was already asking when she could learn to ride. Margaret joined her, settling into the adjacent rocking chair with a contented sigh. "Those 2 have brought more life to this place in one day than we've seen in years," she observed. "They have that effect," Elena agreed, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "Though I think Mr. Donovan, Caleb, deserves some credit too. He's been incredibly patient with them." Margaret smiled knowingly. He always wanted children. He and Emily tried for years before her diagnosis made it impossible. She glanced at Elena. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, it's just, I've known that boy since he was born. Watched him grow into a good man, then watched grief nearly destroy him. Seeing him like this again, it does my heart good. Elena felt a twinge of unease. I wouldn't want anyone to think we're here to replace what he's lost. We just need a fresh start. Maybe that's exactly what he needs too, Margaret said gently. A reason to look forward instead of back. Before Elena could respond, the ranch dogs began barking excitedly. A dusty pickup truck was coming up the drive, moving too fast for the gravel road. It skidded to a stop near the barn, and a man Elena hadn't seen before jumped out, running toward Caleb with obvious urgency. Fire! They heard him shout. Ridgeline's on fire! Moving fast toward the east pasture. The peaceful evening shattered into immediate action. Caleb lifted both twins at once, quickly carrying them to the porch. Stay with Elena and Margaret, he instructed, his voice firm but kind. I need to go help. What can I do? Elena asked, already reaching for her crutches. Caleb shook his head. Stay here. Keep them safe. He turned to Margaret. Call everyone in. Get the water trucks ready. With that, he was gone, jogging toward the barn where ranch hands were already gathering. The distant horizon now showed an ominous orange glow against the darkening sky. Margaret squeezed Elena's shoulder. I need to help coordinate. Can you watch the children? Elena nodded, feeling helpless as the older woman hurried inside. The twins climbed onto the porch swing beside her, their earlier joy replaced by wide-eyed concern. Is it a bad fire, Mama? Maya asked. I don't know, sweetheart, Elena answered honestly. But Caleb and the others know what to do. They'll protect the ranch. As darkness fell completely, the fire on the ridge became clearly visible, a line of angry orange consuming the dry summer grass with frightening speed. Trucks with water tanks sped toward the blaze, their headlights bouncing over the uneven terrain. More vehicles arrived, neighboring ranchers coming to help, Elena assumed. The twins eventually fell asleep on the porch swing, exhausted by the day's excitements. Elena covered them with a blanket Margaret had left, then hobbled to the edge of the porch, straining to see what was happening. The fire line seemed to be moving laterally now, no longer advancing toward the ranch buildings, but she could make out the silhouettes of people still fighting the blaze. Hours passed. Elena managed to move the twins to the guest room bed without waking them, then returned to her vigil on the porch. It was well past midnight when the first trucks began returning, carrying exhausted, soot-covered ranch hands. Caleb was among the last to return, his face and clothes blackened with ash, fatigue evident in every line of his body. He spotted Elena on the porch and approached slowly, as if each step required conscious effort. You should be resting that ankle, he said, his voice hoarse from smoke. I couldn't sleep not knowing, she replied. Is it under control? He nodded, sinking onto the porch steps with a weary sigh. Firebreak held. Lost some grazing land, but could have been much worse if Tyler hadn't spotted it early. He ran a hand through his hair, releasing a small cloud of ash. How are the twins? Asleep. They were worried about you. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. They barely know me. Children are good judges of character, Elena said simply. They know who's worth worrying about. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When I saw that fire line moving toward the east pasture, all I could think about was the three of you in that blue cabin. It's the closest one to that ridge. He looked at her, his gray eyes intense despite his exhaustion. I realized I couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to you. Any of you. The confession hung in the night air between them, unexpected and profound. Elena didn't know how to respond, what this meant for them. These strangers who had so quickly become important to each other. You should get some rest, she said finally. You look dead on your feet. A tired smile cracked through the soot on his face. Not very flattering. You just fought a wildfire. I think you get a pass on appearances. He chuckled, then winced, hand going to his side. Elena noticed for the first time that he was favoring his right arm. "You're hurt," she said, concern sharpening her voice. "It's nothing. Just wrenched my shoulder helping move one of the water tanks." Without thinking, Elena moved closer, her trained eye assessing him for other injuries. "You should let Dr. Haze look at that." "Kate's busy with Ben Thompson. Got a nasty burn on his arm." He waved off her concern. "I've had worse." "At least let me help clean up those cuts," Elena insisted, noticing several scratches on his hands and face. Too tired to argue, Caleb followed her inside to the kitchen, where she made him sit at the table while she gathered first aid supplies. With practiced efficiency, skills honed caring for her own children's scrapes and bruises, she cleaned the soot from his face and hands, disinfected the cuts, and applied antiseptic cream. Caleb watched her work, his expression thoughtful. "You're good at this." "Plenty of practice," she replied, focused on a particularly deep scratch along his forearm. The twins were climbers almost as soon as they could walk, especially Maya. "They're remarkable children," he said softly. "You've done an amazing job with them, especially under difficult circumstances." Elena's hand stilled momentarily, touched by the sincere compliment. "Thank you. That means a lot." When she finished tending his injuries, an awkward silence fell between them. They were both exhausted, emotions raw from the day's events, yet neither seemed ready to end this moment of connection. "I should let you get some sleep," Caleb said finally, rising from the chair. Elena nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the intensity in his gray eyes despite his fatigue. "Elena," he began, then hesitated. "I know you only just arrived and you're still healing, but I want you to know that you and the twins are welcome here. Not just for the job. You're welcome to stay, if none of you have anywhere else you need to be." The words were simple, without dramatic declaration, yet Elena understood their significance. This wasn't just a job offer anymore. It was an invitation to belong, to become part of something larger than themselves. A family, perhaps, in the broadest sense of the word. "We don't," she said quietly. "Have anywhere else to be, I mean. And the twins already love it here." "And you?" Caleb asked, his Elena's heart quickened as she met Caleb's questioning gaze. "And me? She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think I could learn to call this place home." Something shifted in Caleb's expression. Relief, perhaps, or the quiet dawn of hope. He reached out, his calloused fingers gently squeezing her hand. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's a new day." As he walked away, Elena remained in the kitchen, her fingers still warm from his touch. Tomorrow was indeed a new day, the first of many at Whispering Pines Ranch. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the future held promise instead of dread. Morning brought clear skies and no trace of the previous night's fire except for a distant smudge of charred earth on the ridge. Elena woke to find a note from Margaret saying Caleb had taken the twins to see the new calves and that she should rest her ankle. But rest had never come easily to Elena, especially when there was work to be done. Using her crutches, she made her way to the kitchen and began preparing breakfast, a small way to repay the kindness she'd been shown. By the time the twins returned, cheeks flushed with excitement and voices tumbling over each other to tell her about the baby animals, she had managed to make a substantial meal of pancakes, eggs, and bacon. "You didn't have to do this," Margaret protested when she entered the kitchen, though her eyes appreciated the spread. "I wanted to," Elena replied simply. "It's not much compared to what you've all done for us." Caleb appeared in the doorway, watching the scene with an unreadable expression. He'd clearly been up for hours, his clothes bearing the evidence of morning chores. But the fatigue of the previous night had been replaced by a quiet energy. "Something smells good," he said, moving to the sink to wash his hands. The twins immediately began regaling Elena with tales of their morning adventures. How Caleb had let them feed the calves. How Maya had petted a horse. How Lucas had made friends with the youngest border collie. "They're natural ranch kids," Caleb commented, accepting a cup of coffee from Margaret. His eyes met Elena's over the rim of the mug. "Quick learners. Like their mother," Margaret added with a knowing smile. Breakfast passed in comfortable conversation, the twins gradually overcoming their shyness to ask Caleb endless questions about the animals on the ranch. Elena watched the interaction with a mixture of gratitude and caution. They'd been hurt before, abandoned by the one man who should have been their constant protector. She couldn't bear to see them disappointed again. Yet there was something undeniably genuine about Caleb Donovan, a steadiness that spoke of deep roots and unwavering commitment. When he promised the twins they could help collect eggs the next day, Elena knew instinctively he would keep that promise, just as she knew he meant what he'd said about them staying. After breakfast, Dr. Haze arrived to check on Elena's ankle, pronouncing it to be healing well but still requiring several days of minimal weight-bearing. "Which means no moving into that cabin yet," she said firmly, with a pointed look at both Elena and Caleb. "The cabin needs work anyway," Caleb said. "Might as well get it right before they move in." The casual "they," the assumption that Elena and the twins would indeed be staying, sent a strange flutter through Elena's chest. It had been so long since anyone had made plans that included them, since they'd been anything but temporary, precarious. "I could help with painting," Elena offered. "I can sit while doing the lower sections." Kate and Caleb exchanged amused glances. "Already trying to work around doctor's orders," Kate observed. "You'll fit right in with this stubborn bunch." When Kate departed, Caleb lingered in the doorway of the guest room where Elena was reluctantly resting her ankle. "I've got to check the damage from the fire, make sure the fences are secure," he said. "But I was thinking, if you're feeling up to it later, maybe we could discuss the details of your position here. Make it official." Elena nodded, warmth spreading through her at the prospect of security, of permanence. "I'd like that." The afternoon found them on the porch, the twins playing with the ranch dogs under Margaret's watchful eye while Elena and Caleb sat at a small table, working out the terms of her employment. The salary was modest but included the cabin, utilities, access to the ranch's produce, and medical care through Dr. Haze. "It's more than fair," Elena said, overwhelmed by the generosity of the offer. "But I want to make sure I'm earning my keep. I don't want charity." Caleb's expression grew serious. "This isn't charity, Elena. Whispering Pines needs someone like you, someone who can help Margaret with the house and garden, who can eventually take over the bookkeeping." He hesitated. "Emily used to handle all that. Since she passed, it's been neglected." Understanding dawned. "That's why you didn't know about the financial troubles until they became critical." He nodded, a flash of vulnerability crossing his features. "I'm good with animals, with the land. Numbers were never my strength. The banker came last month, said the loan was past due. I'd been so focused on getting the ranch running again, I'd lost track." "I can help with that," Elena said confidently. "I managed the accounts for a small business before the twins were born. It's just a matter of organization and consistency." Relief washed over Caleb's face. "Then it seems we need each other." The simple truth of his statement hung in the air between them, an acknowledgement that their meeting, however accidental it had seemed, might have been exactly what they both needed. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. While Elena's ankle healed, she began organizing the ranch's scattered financial records, creating a system that would make future management simpler. The twins blossomed in the freedom of country life, following Margaret or Caleb around the ranch, collecting eggs, helping feed the smaller animals, their city pallor giving way to sun-kissed cheeks and boundless energy. A week after their arrival, Caleb and two ranch hands moved their belongings from the broken-down station wagon into the blue cabin, which had undergone a remarkable transformation. The walls had been freshly painted in warm cream with blue trim, the bathroom fixtures replaced, the flower boxes filled with bright blooms. Someone, Elena suspected Margaret, had hung cheerful curtains at the windows and placed a colorful braided rug before the fireplace. "It's beautiful," Elena breathed as she stood in the doorway, still leaning on a single crutch but able to put some weight on her healing ankle. Caleb watched her reaction with barely concealed pleasure. The ranch hands helped after hours. Everyone pitched in a little. "Why would they do that for strangers?" Elena asked, genuinely puzzled by such generosity. "Because that's how Whispering Pines works," Caleb replied simply. "And because you're not strangers anymore." That evening, their first in the cabin, Elena sat on the small porch watching the twins chase fireflies in the yard. The distant mountains were silhouetted against the fading light, the air sweet with pine and wildflowers. From this vantage point, she could see the lights of the main house and the gentle movement of cattle in the nearest pasture. The crunch of gravel announced Caleb's approach. He carried a basket, which he set on the porch beside her chair. "Housewarming gift," he explained. "Just some essentials." Elena peered into the basket to find a loaf of Margaret's fresh bread, a jar of honey, a bottle of wine, and a small carved wooden horse. "That's hardly essential," she said, lifting the carving with a smile. "Lucas mentioned he'd always wanted a horse of his own," Caleb said, his voice gruff with something like embarrassment. "Thought this might do until he's old enough for the real thing." The implication that they would be here long enough for Lucas to grow into riding age wasn't lost on Elena. "You made this?" Caleb nodded. "My grandfather taught me. Used to carve during the winter evenings when outside work was done." Elena ran her fingers over the smooth wood, touched by the thought and care that had gone into the gift. "Thank you. For everything." He settled into the chair beside hers, his gaze following the twins as they played. "They bring life to this place," he said quietly. "It's been too quiet for too long." "They've always had that effect," Elena replied. "Even in our darkest times, they found joy in small things. They've taught me more about resilience than I ever taught them." Caleb turned to her, his expression serious in the gathering dusk. "What happened with their father?" "If you don't mind my asking." Elena was silent for a long moment, considering how much to share. "His name is Marcus. We met in college. He was charming, ambitious, full of big plans. When I got pregnant, he seemed excited at first. Even proposed." She twisted the phantom of a ring that had long since been sold to pay bills. "But after the twins were born, everything changed. He wasn't prepared for the reality of parenthood. The constant demands, the financial pressure, the lack of sleep." She sighed, the old pain dulled but still present. "When they were 2, he took a job out of state. Said he'd send for us once he was settled. 3 months later, he called to say he'd met someone else, someone without baggage, as he put it." Caleb's jaw tightened. "The man's a fool." "Maybe," Elena conceded. "Or maybe he just wasn't ready for the life he found himself in. Either way, the twins and I learned to manage on our own." "You've done an incredible job," Caleb said, his admiration evident. "They're wonderful children. Happy, polite, curious about everything." Pride warmed Elena's heart. "They are, aren't they? I worried so much about how our circumstances would affect them. Whether the instability would leave lasting scars." "Children are remarkably resilient when they're loved," Caleb observed. "And those 2 are clearly very loved." They fell into comfortable silence, watching as the twins finally tired of their game and approached the porch, their small faces glowing with happiness and exertion. "Can Mr. Caleb tell us a bedtime story?" Lucas asked, his usual shyness forgotten in the easy familiarity that had developed over the past week. Caleb looked momentarily startled by the request, then genuinely pleased. "I'd be honored," he said seriously, "though I should warn you, most of my stories involve horses and cattle." "Those are the best kind," Maya declared, climbing onto his lap without hesitation. Something tightened in Elena's throat as she watched Caleb adjust to accommodate the child, his large hand automatically steadying Maya's back in a protective gesture that seemed instinctive rather than learned. Lucas leaned against Caleb's knee, looking up with undisguised adoration. Later, after the twins were tucked into their new beds in the small bedroom with its cheerful yellow walls, Caleb and Elena sat at the kitchen table, sharing the wine he'd brought. "They're asleep already," Elena marveled. "Usually it takes at least 3 stories and a lengthy negotiation." Caleb smiled. "Fresh air and farm chores will do that. By next week, they'll be sleeping like puppies after a day of play." "Speaking of next week," Elena began carefully, "Dr. Haze says I should be able to start working properly by then. I've organized the financial records as best I could from the house, but I'd like to get started on the garden and whatever else Margaret needs help with." "No rush," Caleb assured her. Take the time you need to heal properly. I'm not used to having that luxury, Elena admitted. Usually I'd be back at work the moment I could stand, injury or not. Caleb studied her across the table, his gray eyes thoughtful in the lamplight. You've been carrying a heavy load alone for a long time. It wasn't a question, but Elena nodded anyway. I didn't have a choice. You do now, he said simply. The words hung between them, laden with meaning beyond their simple syllables. Elena felt something shift inside her. A loosening of the tight control she'd maintained for so long, the vigilance required of a single parent with no safety net. It's hard to believe that, she said softly. Hard to trust that things might actually work out this time. Understandable, Caleb replied. Trust takes time, but for what it's worth, I keep my promises, Elena. You and the twins have a place here for as long as you want it. When he left a short while later, Elena stood in the doorway of the cabin, watching his tall figure recede toward the main house. The night was alive with the sounds of the country, crickets chirping, the occasional lowing of cattle, the rustling of wind through pine needles. So different from the city's constant noise, yet somehow more vivid, more present. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to envision a future beyond the next rent payment, beyond mere survival. A future where her children could grow up with space to run, with animals to care for, with a community that valued them. A future that might even include the quiet, steadfast man who had welcomed them into his world with such unexpected warmth. It was too soon for such thoughts, she knew. They were still virtual strangers, brought together by chance and circumstance. Yet something about Caleb Donovan resonated with her. Perhaps the shared experience of rebuilding a life from broken pieces, or the gentle way he interacted with her children, or simply the inherent decency that seemed to guide his every action. Whatever it was, Elena found herself looking forward to discovering more about the rancher who had offered them not just employment, but a home. The following weeks settled into a pattern that felt increasingly natural. As Elena's ankle healed completely, she began working alongside Margaret in the house and garden, learning the rhythms of ranch life. The older woman proved to be a patient teacher and a treasure trove of practical knowledge. Everything from how to preserve the garden's bounty for winter to natural remedies for common ailments. You've got a knack for this life, Margaret observed one afternoon as they worked together, canning tomatoes from the abundant garden harvest. Some city folks never adjust, but you've taken to it like you were born to it. Elena smiled, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. It feels right, somehow, more authentic than the life we had before. And the children are thriving, Margaret added, glancing out the window where the twins were helping one of the younger ranch hands feed the chickens. Especially Lucas. That boy's coming out of his shell more every day. It was true. The shy, hesitant child who had arrived at Whispering Pines was transforming before Elena's eyes. Speaking up more, laughing more freely, even initiating conversations with the ranch hands he had once regarded with such caution. Much of the change, Elena knew, was due to Caleb's influence. The rancher had taken a special interest in Lucas, seeming to understand instinctively that the boy needed male attention and validation. Each morning, Caleb would find a small task that Lucas could help with, collecting eggs, feeding the barn cats, checking the rain gauge. Simple responsibilities that made the child feel important. Included, Maya, always more outgoing, had become Margaret's shadow, absorbing the older woman's knowledge like a sponge and charming everyone with her boundless enthusiasm. She'd even started riding lessons on an ancient gentle pony named Butterscotch, showing a natural affinity that delighted Caleb. As for Elena herself, she found unexpected satisfaction in the varied work of ranch life. The financial records were now meticulously organized, giving her a clear picture of Whispering Pines' situation. The loan that had so concerned Caleb was being steadily repaid, and while the ranch wasn't wealthy, it was sustainable, a family business that could support them all if managed carefully. Beyond the practical aspects, there was a deeper contentment growing within her, a sense of belonging that had been absent for so long, she'd almost forgotten its feeling. The ranch community had embraced them completely, including them in Sunday dinners, birthday celebrations, and the everyday camaraderie that sustained those who worked the land together. And then there was Caleb. Their relationship had evolved gradually, naturally, from employer and employee to something that defied simple definition. They shared coffee on her porch most mornings, discussing the day's work and the children's latest adventures. In the evenings, he often joined them for dinner in the small cabin, bringing offerings from his own hunting or fishing expeditions and staying to help with dishes afterward. They talked easily about everything: the ranch, their childhoods, books they'd read, dreams they'd deferred. The only subject they carefully avoided was the obvious attraction growing between them, the way their hands sometimes brushed while working together, the lingering glances that conveyed more than words could express. Elena was cautious, protective of her heart, and, more importantly, of her children's emotional well-being. They had already grown attached to Caleb, to the ranch, to this new life. If things went wrong between the adults, the children would be the ones most deeply hurt. Yet she couldn't deny the warmth that filled her when Caleb was near, the way his rare smile transformed his solemn features, the quiet strength that made her feel safe for the first time in years. There was something profoundly appealing about a man who chose his words carefully, who showed his feelings through actions rather than declarations, who treated her children with the same respect he accorded adults. One evening in late summer, as golden light slanted across the mountains and crickets began their nightly chorus, Elena sat on her porch, watching the twins play with the border collies in the yard. Caleb appeared, leading his horse, apparently just returned from checking the herd in the furthest pasture. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, tying the horse to the porch rail. Elena smiled, gesturing to the empty chair beside hers. "Long day?" He nodded, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. "Fence down on the north boundary. Took most of the afternoon to repair it." His gaze shifted to the twins. "They look happy." "They are," Elena confirmed. "Happier than I've seen them in maybe ever." Something in her voice must have conveyed her lingering disbelief at their good fortune, because Caleb turned to her, his expression earnest. "You've made a real difference here, Elena. Not just with the bookkeeping or helping Margaret. The whole place feels alive again." "We needed this place as much as it needed us," she replied softly. Caleb was silent for a moment, watching the children. Then, with characteristic directness, he said, "There's a fall festival in town next weekend. Thought maybe you and the twins might like to go with me." The hesitation in his voice, so unlike his usual confidence, told Elena this was more than a casual invitation. "Like a date?" she asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "Like a start," he replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "If you're ready for that." Elena considered his words, the careful way he framed the invitation as a beginning rather than a demand or expectation. It was so characteristic of the man. Patient, considerate, always giving her space to decide her own path. "I think I am," she said finally, "ready for a start." The smile that spread across Caleb's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, gradual, warming, illuminating. He reached across the space between their chairs, his calloused hand gently covering hers. No grand gestures, no flowery declarations, just the simple, profound connection of two people who had found in each other an unexpected second chance. As twilight deepened into dusk, they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the twins chase fireflies in the gathering darkness. From the cabin, Freckles clucked contentedly, having established herself as queen of the small coop Caleb had built especially for her. In the distance, cattle lowed softly as they settled for the night, and somewhere an owl called to the rising moon. It wasn't the life Elena had imagined for herself or her children. It was something better, something authentic and enduring, built on mutual need and growing affection rather than fleeting passion or convenience. Like the mountains that stood sentinel over whispering pines, it had the feeling of permanence, of belonging exactly where they were meant to be. The woman who had limped into Caleb Donovan's life with twins and a chicken in a basket had found more than employment or shelter. She had found home. The fall festival transformed the small town near Whispering Pines Ranch into a celebration of harvest and community. Maple and oak trees lining Main Street blazed with autumn colors, while storefronts displayed pumpkins, corn stalks, and harvest-themed decorations. The town square had become a hub of activity, with booths selling handcrafts, local produce, and home-baked goods. Elena watched her twins dart excitedly between attractions, their faces painted, Lucas as a wolf, Maya as a butterfly, clutching sticky caramel apples in their small hands. Caleb walked beside Elena, occasionally placing his hand lightly at the small of her back to guide her through the crowds, the simple touch sending warmth through her despite the crisp autumn air. "They're having the time of their lives," Elena remarked, smiling as Maya dragged Lucas toward a petting zoo featuring baby goats and rabbits. "So is everyone else," Caleb replied, nodding toward the townspeople who called greetings as they passed. "You've become quite popular around here." Elena blushed slightly. In the 2 months since their arrival at Whispering Pines, she had gradually integrated into the tight-knit community, bringing the twins to town for supplies, attending the small church with Margaret, even helping organize a fundraiser for the local school. What had once felt like a foreign world now embraced them as its own. "Ms. Elena," a teenage girl approached, her arms filled with handmade quilts. "Did you bring your chicken? Dad said you might bring her for the pet showcase." Elena laughed. "Not this time, Jessie. Freckles is guarding her new eggs very seriously these days." The girl's face lit up. "She's laying? That's amazing. My Rhode Island Reds just started too. Maybe we could trade some chicks in the spring?" "I'd like that," Elena agreed, warmed by the simple exchange, the easy acceptance that had become their new normal. As Jessie moved on to set up her family's booth, Caleb nudged Elena gently. "See what I mean? You're not outsiders anymore." Elena's throat tightened with emotion. "It's still hard to believe sometimes. That, we belong here." Caleb's gray eyes held hers, serious now despite the festive atmosphere around them. "You do belong. More than you know." Before she could respond, the twins returned, tugging them toward a pie judging contest where Margaret stood proudly beside her famous apple creation. The day unfolded in a kaleidoscope of small-town traditions, a parade featuring the high school band, tractor pulls, square dancing in the gazebo, horse-drawn wagon rides around the square. Through it all, Elena felt Caleb's steady presence beside her, his quiet attentiveness to the twins' excitement, his subtle protectiveness when crowds grew too thick. It was their first official date, though the term seemed inadequate for what was developing between them, this careful, deliberate building of something that felt increasingly like family. As afternoon faded into evening, lanterns and string lights illuminated the square. A local band set up on a small stage, their country melodies drawing couples to a cleared area for dancing. Elena sat with Margaret on a bench, watching as Caleb taught the twins how to two-step, his large hands holding theirs with exaggerated formality that made them giggle uncontrollably. "He's different with you three," Margaret observed, her wise eyes crinkling with pleasure. "Lighter. More like the Caleb who existed before loss hardened him." Elena nodded, unable to deny the transformation she'd witnessed over the past months. The solemn, withdrawn man who had found her limping along the roadside had gradually given way to someone who smiled more easily, who laughed at the twins' antics, who seemed to find joy in simple daily moments. "We're different with him too," she admitted. "Especially Lucas. He's never had a male role model who actually showed up consistently." Margaret patted her hand. "Some things are meant to be, dear. Sometimes the universe puts broken pieces together and makes something stronger than what existed before." Before Elena could ponder this wisdom, Caleb approached, slightly out of breath from dancing with the children. "I believe I was promised to dance with the most beautiful woman at the festival," he said, extending his hand to Elena. "Did you hear that, Margaret?" "Caleb wants to dance with you," Elena teased, earning a rare full laugh from the rancher. "While Margaret is indeed lovely," he played along, "I was hoping you might do me the honor." Elena placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her to the dance floor as Margaret shooed them away with a fond smile, the twins settling beside her with cups of hot cider. The band had shifted to a slower song, something wistful about finding love when least expected. Caleb's arms encircled Elena with respectful gentleness, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers against his chest. They moved together with surprising ease, as if their bodies had memorized each other's rhythms long before this moment. "Thank you," Elena said softly, looking up at him in the golden glow of the festival lights. For the dance? Caleb asked, his voice equally low. For everything. For stopping that day on the road. For giving us a chance. For being so good with the twins. Something deepened in his gaze. They make it easy. You all do. They danced in silence for a moment, the music wrapping around them like a promise. Elena, Caleb began, his voice serious now. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have mentioned before. A flicker of anxiety tensed her shoulders. In her experience, such beginnings rarely led to happy revelations. Caleb must have felt her stiffen, because he drew her slightly closer, his hand warm and reassuring against hers. It's nothing bad, he assured her. Just something I want you to know. About Emily. Your wife, Elena said softly. He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers, even as they continued to move with the music. Before she died, she made me promise something. She knew how I'd likely retreat into grief, how I might let everything we built together crumble. His voice grew husky with remembered pain. She made me promise that when the time came, if the time came, I wouldn't let guilt keep me from finding happiness again. Elena's heart beat faster. Understanding the significance of his words, the gift his late wife had given him. Permission to heal, to move forward, to love again. For a long time I couldn't imagine keeping that promise, Caleb continued. Couldn't imagine wanting to. Then you limped into my life with those amazing children and that ridiculous chicken. A small laugh escaped Elena, half joy, half nervous anticipation. What I'm trying to say, Caleb said, the music fading around them though they continued to sway together, is that I'm falling in love with you, Elena Reyes. With your strength, your determination, your incredible capacity to create home wherever you are. And I'm falling in love with those children too. The words hung between them, honest and unadorned, much like the man himself. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, emotion welling up from some deep place that had been carefully guarded for so long. You don't have to say anything now, he added quickly. I just wanted you to know where I stand. That this, us, it means something to me, something serious and lasting if you want that too. Elena looked beyond him, to where the twins sat with Margaret, their faces illuminated by the festival lights, happier and more secure than she'd ever seen them. Then back to Caleb's face, lined by sun and past sorrow, but open now, vulnerable in a way few people had ever been with her. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, the truth of it resonating through her entire being. And it terrifies me. Caleb's hands tightened slightly on hers. Why? Because the last time I thought I'd found something permanent, it shattered. And the stakes are so much higher now. It's not just me who could get hurt. Understanding softened his features. I'm not Marcus, Elena. When I commit to something, to someone, it's for life. I know that, she said. And she did. In the months she'd known him, Caleb Donovan had proven himself to be exactly what he appeared. Steadfast, honorable, a man whose word was his bond. That's what scares me. How much I want to believe in this. In us. The music ended, but they remained together in their small island of intimacy amidst the festival crowds. Caleb raised one hand to gently touch her cheek. Believe, he said simply. I do. Later that night, after the twins had fallen asleep in the truck on the drive home, exhausted from the day's excitement, Caleb walked Elena to the door of the blue cabin. The October moon hung large and golden over whispering pines, casting long shadows across the familiar landscape. I had a wonderful time, Elena said, suddenly shy in a way she hadn't been since her teenage years. So did I, Caleb replied, his voice deep in the night stillness. And I meant what I said earlier, about my feelings. But I need you to know something else too. Elena waited, watching as he gathered his thoughts. There's no rush, he continued finally. No pressure. We can take this as slowly as you need. The job, the cabin, your place here. None of that depends on us. Whatever happens or doesn't happen between us, you and the twins have a home at Whispering Pines for as long as you want it. The words were exactly what Elena needed to hear. Assurance that the security they'd found wasn't contingent on her romantic choices, that Caleb understood the complex calculations of a single mother trying to protect her children from further hurt. "Thank you for understanding," she said softly. Caleb smiled, the moonlight catching the silver strands in his dark hair. "Good night, Elena." He turned to leave, but Elena caught his hand, drawing him back. Rising on tiptoe, she pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek, then, with newfound boldness, to his lips. The contact was brief but electric, a promise of possibilities neither had dared imagine just months before. "Good night, Caleb," she whispered, then slipped inside to where her sleeping children waited to be carried to their beds. Autumn deepened across Whispering Pines Ranch, painting the landscape in russet and gold. The days grew shorter, the mornings frosty, the evenings perfect for fires in the hearth. Elena and the twins settled more completely into ranch life, their city habits gradually replaced by rural rhythms, early mornings with the animals, satisfying physical work throughout the day, quiet evenings together. The relationship between Elena and Caleb evolved with similar organic patience. There were no grand gestures or dramatic declarations, just the steady building of trust and affection through shared work, shared meals, shared responsibility for the ranch and the children. Small touches became more frequent, conversations deeper, the ease between them more natural with each passing day. The twins, especially Lucas, blossomed under Caleb's attentive guidance. The boy, who had once been nearly silent around strangers, now chattered excitedly about horses, cattle, and ranch life. He shadowed Caleb whenever possible, absorbing knowledge about animals and the land with remarkable focus for a child his age. "He looks up to you so much," Elena observed one evening as she and Caleb washed dishes after dinner in the main house. Through the window, they could see Lucas carefully feeding the barn cats under Margaret's supervision, his small face serious with responsibility. "He's a good kid," Caleb replied, his voice warm with genuine affection. "Smart, observant. Gonna make a fine rancher someday." The casual way he projected the twins' future at Whispering Pines, the unspoken assumption that they would grow up on this land he loved so deeply, filled Elena with quiet joy. "And Maya?" she asked, curious about his assessment of her daughter, who was currently helping Margaret gather eggs with characteristic enthusiasm. A smile crossed Caleb's face. "That one's going to run the whole operation someday, probably expand it too. She's already got ideas about adding an alpaca herd." Elena laughed, recognizing the truth in his words. Maya had always been the visionary, the dreamer, while Lucas was more methodical, more grounded. Together, they balanced each other perfectly. "They're lucky to have you in their lives," she said softly. "To have a man who sees them so clearly, who values them for exactly who they are." Caleb set down the dish he was drying, turning to face her fully. "I'm the lucky one, Elena. To have all of you." The simple sincerity of his words wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace. This was what had been missing in her previous relationship. This deep appreciation that went beyond surface attraction or convenience. This mutual recognition of value and worth. As October gave way to November, preparations for winter consumed the ranch. Hay was stored for the cattle, wood piles stacked high beside every building, the garden harvested and put to bed until spring. Elena threw herself into learning these new seasonal tasks, determined to pull her weight in the community that had so completely embraced them. One crisp morning, she stood in the garden with Margaret, covering the last of the perennial beds with straw for winter protection, when Kate Hayes' truck came racing up the drive, skidding to a stop near the barn where Caleb was working. "Fire at the Thompson place," they heard her shout. "Everyone's safe, but they need help containing it before it spreads." The words sent a ripple of alarm through the ranch. The Thompson farm bordered Whispering Pines to the east, and with the dry conditions of late autumn, fire posed a serious threat to both properties. Within minutes, Caleb had mobilized the ranch hands. Water trucks were filled, tools loaded, emergency plans enacted with practiced efficiency. Elena watched, heart in her throat, as Caleb approached her and Margaret. "I need to go," he said, his expression grave. "Tyler will stay behind with you and the children. If the wind shifts and the fire heads this way, he knows the evacuation route." Elena nodded, fear and determination warring within her. "Be careful." Caleb touched her cheek briefly, a gesture that conveyed everything words could not in that moment of crisis. Then he was gone, leading the convoy of trucks toward the distant column of smoke. now visible on the horizon. The next hours passed in tense vigilance. Elena gathered the twins in the main house, explaining the situation in terms they could understand without causing panic. Margaret prepared food and coffee, knowing the firefighters and volunteers would need sustenance when they returned. Tyler, a veteran ranch hand in his 60s, monitored the radio reports and kept watch on the ridgeline, ready to sound the alarm if evacuation became necessary. As dusk approached, the first trucks began returning to Whispering Pines, carrying exhausted, soot-covered men and women. The fire had been contained, though not before destroying the Thompsons' barn and several outbuildings. The family would stay with relatives until repairs could be made, but their house had been saved, as had their livestock. Elena moved among the returning firefighters, offering water, food, and quiet thanks. Her eyes searched constantly for Caleb, anxiety growing as truck after truck arrived without him. "Where's Caleb?" she finally asked Tyler, unable to contain her worry any longer. The older man's weathered face creased with concern. "Last I heard, he was helping check for hot spots along the eastern boundary. Should have been back by now." As if summoned by their conversation, headlights appeared on the ranch road. Caleb's truck pulled up slowly, almost hesitantly. When he emerged, Elena gasped. His right arm was bandaged, his face streaked with soot and pain. She rushed to him, the twins close behind. "What happened? Are you all right?" "Falling debris," he grimaced. "Nothing serious. Dr. Haze patched me up." But Elena could see by the careful way he held himself, the tightness around his eyes, that he was downplaying his injuries. "Inside," she ordered, her tone brooking no argument. "Now." In the kitchen, she gently removed his jacket, revealing a more extensive bandage than she'd initially thought. "Kate said it's mostly superficial," Caleb explained, submitting to her examination. "Just needs cleaning and rest." The twins hovered nearby, wide-eyed with concern. "Is Mr. Caleb going to be okay?" Lucas asked in a small voice. "I'm fine, partner," Caleb assured him, though the effort of smiling clearly cost him. "Just a scratch." Elena sent the children to help Margaret prepare tea, then turned back to Caleb, her hands gentle but firm as she checked his injuries. "You scared me," she admitted quietly. "I'm sorry," he replied, reaching for her hand with his uninjured one. "Didn't mean to worry you." "That's what happens when you care about someone," she said, blinking back unexpected tears. "You worry." Caleb's expression softened, the pain in his eyes temporarily replaced by something warmer. "I like that you care enough to worry." Later that evening, with Caleb resting in the main house under Margaret's watchful eye and the twins finally asleep after the day's excitement, Elena sat alone on her cabin porch. The night was clear and cold, stars sprawling across the vast Montana sky in breathtaking abundance. In the distance, the scorched boundary of the Thompson property was invisible in the darkness, though she knew morning would reveal the fire's destructive path. The sound of footsteps made her turn. Caleb approached slowly, clearly still in pain, but moving with determination. "You should be resting," she scolded gently, rising to meet him. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Needed to see you. To make sure you and the twins were really okay." The admission touched her deeply. That even injured, his first concern was for them. "We're fine. It's you I'm worried about." Caleb joined her on the porch swing, his uninjured arm naturally finding its way around her shoulders. "Today made me realize something," he said after a moment of comfortable silence. "Life is unpredictable, fragile." Elena nodded, leaning into his solid warmth. "Yes, it is." "I don't want to waste any more time," he continued, his voice low and earnest in the darkness. "When that barn roof collapsed, all I could think about was getting back to you and the twins, about all the things I haven't said yet, haven't done." Elena's heart quickened, sensing the importance of this moment. "What things?" Caleb shifted to face her more directly, wincing slightly at the movement. "I love you, Elena. Not just falling anymore. Fully, completely in love with you. With your strength, your courage, your capacity for joy, despite everything life has thrown at you. I love Maya's boundless enthusiasm and Lucas's quiet thoughtfulness. I love the way you've brought Whispering Pines back to life. The words washed over Elena like a healing balm, filling empty spaces she hadn't realized still existed within her. "I know it's only been a few months," Caleb acknowledged, "and I promised we'd move at your pace. But today reminded me that sometimes tomorrow isn't guaranteed, so I need you to know how I feel, what I want." "What do you want?" Elena whispered, though she thought she already knew, hoped she knew. "A life with you. With the twins. A family. Our family. Here at Whispering Pines." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I want mornings and evenings and all the moments in between. I want to help Lucas learn to ride and listen to Maya's big plans. I want to grow old watching you gather eggs with that ridiculous chicken of yours." A laugh escaped Elena, half joy, half overwhelmed emotion. Freckles would be offended at being called ridiculous. "Probably," Caleb agreed, smiling despite his obvious pain. "But she's part of the package, and I love her too. I love all of you. Every complicated, beautiful piece." Elena reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle against the day's scratches and older lines etched by sun and time. "We love you too," she said simply, the words carrying the weight of months of growing affection, of watching this man rebuild not just his ranch but his capacity for connection, for family. Caleb's good arm tightened around her, drawing her closer. "I'm not asking for answers tonight, or commitments. Just wanted you to know where I stand. Where I hope we're heading." Elena leaned her head against his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I think we're heading towards something wonderful," she murmured. "Something I stopped believing was possible for us." Above them, a shooting star traced a brilliant path across the Montana sky, a fleeting reminder of how precious and rare true connection could be. "Will you stay?" Elena asked, the question encompassing so much more than just this evening. "Not tonight necessarily, but with us? For good?" Caleb pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, then her lips. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away," he promised. "You and the twins. You're my home now. Wherever you are is where I belong." In the quiet ranch night, with distant mountains standing sentinel against the star-filled sky, Elena finally allowed herself to believe completely in this unexpected gift, this second chance at family, at wholeness, at love. The road that had led her to Whispering Pines, difficult and uncertain as it had been, now seemed like destiny rather than accident. The woman who had once limped along a dusty road with twins and a chicken in a basket had found not just shelter or employment, but the missing pieces of a life she hadn't dared to imagine. A partner who valued her strength as well as her vulnerability, a community that embraced her children as their own, a place where they all belonged exactly as they were. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new moments to navigate together. But tonight, in the circle of Caleb's arms, Elena knew with bone-deep certainty that they had found their way home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.